This scene hurts really bad. Like, seeing Aki just striking his lighter, and as, like, he's striking his lighter here, he's just remembering Himeno. It's just, it's such an emotional moment. Like, it made me incredibly sad just seeing this scene. And the reason why it's just so sad is because I think anyone in Aki's situation that has, like, probably experienced a lost loved one, there's always something, if you deeply care about that individual, there's always something that you will notice that will remind you of them. And obviously, the significance of the lighter to the cigarette is very important to his connection with Himeno. And every time he tries to strike the lighter or he tries to smoke a cigarette now, he's going to be reminded of her. And it's a very powerful moment. And there's just so much emotion and life put into this scene that honestly, I felt so immersed. I felt like I was in the room watching this man have a mental breakdown. It's emotional. This is a very emotional scene. Like, the manga equivalent, like, here's the manga page of it, just to show. The manga page equivalent is very similar to how the episode depicts it, but obviously with the animation to the striking of the lighter movement with the flickering of the flame, and then the little images of Himeno kind of put in between this, I think that the anime 100% surpassed the manga in this scene, and I keep saying this when it comes to, like, Chainsaw Man. It keeps doing this. It keeps surpassing the original source, and I always love seeing that. And this scene, man, really does give so much more to Aki's character and what he is currently feeling. Because here's the thing. A lot of times when you have these emotional moments, like these moments of loss, when a character dies, we do see characters have to overcome this or have to move on, or a lot of their overall recovery is off-screen. This is stuff that happens often in shonen manga, and I'm not saying that all manga do that, I'm just saying it is something that happens often where, like, their overall depression or sadness or overcoming the loss is off-screened. But when you look at this scene, we get to see the whole breakdown of this character, and just seeing him literally losing someone that has kind of helped him out these past few years. And it's emotional. Like, there's really no other word to really describe just how emotional this scene is. Seeing this man break down, and then once all this is done, you just see Denji, he's outside the door, and he's listening in on Aki crying. And I think that this moment also is very powerful for a lot of reasons, to give clarity to Denji's character, his personality, to power as well that's also in the background, to Aki, and then everything else that follows up after this later on in the episode with, Aki trying to get his, devil contract, and also how Denji kind of, like, doesn't really think much about Aki after this moment throughout the rest of the episode. So let's talk about Denji. I think it's a perfect segue, honestly, because Denji asks a very important question internally in his mind. He starts to wonder, is he a crappy person? Is he straight up an awful human being for not crying to Himeno's death? He starts to wonder about this, and then as this overall discussion inside of his head is going on, he starts to say, like, I was very sad, very depressed with, Puchita, and when I lost him, I was just straight up devastated. That's what he said. And he knows how it feels to be sad. But he's like, why am I not crying for Himeno? Why am I not doing that? And then he's like, am I a crappy person? And this is Denji as a character realizing what it means to actually be human in a different way. He starts to think he's a demon or a devil because, Puchita has technically replaced his heart, but we gotta remember this from different ways of how humans express emotions. And I think that this is a very good depiction of just how humans deal with sadness, depression, in many different shapes and forms. Let's talk about that. So obviously, Aki is a good example of, him breaking down. He's very depressed, and he's just crying. He's the typical reaction of someone being very sad on the sense of loss. While Denji, he might not fully feel anything for Himeno because she was relatively new in his life, he still probably has something that is there, to a degree. And he's expressing it in a very different way. And the reason how we could tell this is exactly happening is because he leaves Aki an apple. which shows that he has compassion and he does care about Aki to an extent. Even if he doesn't fully show it, and he probably doesn't have the best way of showing it, the point is he did leave him an apple. And that does say enough that he does have a heart. He does care to an extent. And once again, people just express emotion in such a different way. Some people distance themselves, some people cry, some people get angry, some people lash out, some people just don't show any emotion and they just bottle it up inside themselves, and maybe, 10 years down the road, they think about something and then they get sad about it. People have different ways of displaying their emotion, and especially with the sense of loss. And I think that this is a very powerful moment, because for Denji to even make this assessment on himself, to realize that he's not crying, shows that he is very human. He has the brain to realize what's going on around him, but also he realizes that he's not acting in a normal way that people normally would, like cry, etc. But that makes him very unique as a character. He isn't a normal person, because as I said in my early reviews of Chainsaw Man, he has been stunted. He has been someone that has been completely disconnected from the real world around him, because he hasn't gotten to experience many things in his life. And so obviously even the sense of loss to a degree would be a little bit different for him, because he lost his parents very early on in his life. He lost Puchita, and the way he reacts to these things is definitely going to be very different than probably someone like, Aki, which that's another thing to talk about, Aki's sense of loss, but also later on, when we get to meet Kishibe, that's how you say his name. I'm not going to say Kobini, like the same way, with a B-E. But, anyways, Kishibe, he's sitting at a gravesite, and one thing I want to point out, which is implied subtly with this scene, is that he is looking at a grave. And the only thing we can assume here is, the only time we were introduced to this character for the anime is that he met, Himeno. He was talking with her at a grave, and then, she was visiting, her lost, deceased comrades that worked with her. And then he made a statement to her saying, like, you're definitely not that crazy for you to be visiting your, the comrades' graves almost every single week or every single day. Basically implying that, you clearly have attachment and emotion, you're not able to move on, and it shows that you are fully crazy. And the thing is that Kishibe being here shows that he actually cares about Himeno, and he's visiting her grave. That's the only thing we could assume, because he's staring at a grave here, he's drinking, there's nothing really said, but that is definitely what is implied with this scene. So I think that's a very powerful, subtle story detail that obviously not many are going to catch, but he's definitely kind of going against, like, what he said to Denji in Power. He's a hypocrite. He's also a hypocrite to, Himeno. For instance, saying, like, you visiting the grave, you shouldn't be doing that, but obviously he's visiting. And for him to, even say, like, he's, looking for the best, devil hunters, and, he's one of the best, it shows he's not completely perfect, which also fits in line with humans, etc. But, I think this is a very powerful scene, kind of showing, once again, how people deal with death. And you can kind of see that maybe this scene here and his rage, or not really his rage, him attacking Denji in Power, might be in his own way getting out some frustration that he wasn't there to protect Himeno. Who knows? That's up for speculation and thought, but the point is that he definitely is grieving for her death in some shape or form. So we get to see many different forms of grieving, especially within this episode. Now, let's fast forward a little bit, and we got to talk about, with Aki going into this devil's room, and how he is making a new contract with this devil. We don't know much about this devil, we just know that it took a person's, like, one half of his lifespan, another, it took this other person's, like, senses of hearing and taste or whatever, so it shows that this devil can be very vague, and he definitely could just pick and choose what he wants. And so what would he want from Aki is a very good question. To be able to take someone's sense of taste and hearing, that makes you wonder, what really can he take? What is the limit, so to say, with that devil and what he could take from Aki? I mean, Aki doesn't really have much life to give. We found out within this episode that he has 2 years left to live. That time limit is on him. That's not that long left to live. On top of that, what would he give that would actually be a bargain? So, I think that Aki as well, him going and making a new contract is showcasing a different way of grieving as well. And I think what gives a lot of clarity to this, especially the letter he gets from Himeno's sister. And this letter is what Himeno wrote a long time ago, basically asking Aki to quit. Basically trying to figure out a way to get Aki to go private and leave the Devil Hunters Association. And it's a very powerful moment because we don't get to fully see Aki's complete reaction, but we can definitely see that everything in this moment is what drove him to want to get a new contract, what drove him to wanting to, continue pressing forward as a Devil Hunter, because obviously, I think in this moment, there's two different outcomes that could have happened. If Himeno was alive, hypothetically, if there was a way for her to be alive, okay, obviously that's not going to happen, but hypothetically, we're going on a limb here, okay? If there was a hypothetical way that Himeno was alive and could be alive, I think Aki would take it, and he might weigh the balance of wanting revenge against the Gun Devil or going maybe private with Himeno. But because she's not there, his overall counterweight holding him to reality, holding him down to where, like, he won't die, so to say, is gone. And so he is driven by just sheer conviction to get rid of the Gun Devil, no matter the cost. That's kind of what this episode, or this scene, implies, is that nothing is holding him back anymore. He has 2 years left to live. That's not long. He's like, what else does he need to worry about? He's gonna die anyway, so it doesn't matter now. So it's like, I'm just gonna go all in. So he doesn't care what bargain or whatever he has to give up to be able to get rid of the Gun Devil, which could go down a very dark path when you think about it. So just a very powerful scene, honestly. And I think that the whole letter that the little sister gave Aki is more damning or damaging to Aki than maybe her slapping him or saying some harsh words to him. The fact that she gave it to him is probably what drove him even more into insanity in the first place. That's all I'm going to say. Now, let's back up to a few other scenes. So one other scene, obviously, that this episode does shows, Kishibe, actually teaching Power and Denji how to be better Devil Hunters. And obviously, it's just a straight slaughter. They can't do anything. They get absolutely destroyed by this man while he's just getting completely drunk and plastered. It's like, holy crap, this man is insane. He destroys them. And according to Power, Denji, died 20 times, maybe more. So it's just insane how much, Denji and Power had to kind of brush close to death to be able to even survive the first day with him. And I think what makes this episode very interesting as well is that they come up with a plan to try to attack him, and obviously it wasn't enough. Power kind of runs out of stamina because, she used too much blood, and then he's like, you know what, you've done enough, and he walks away. And Denji thinks that they actually, hey, we did good. He's only going to attack us once today. But then he attacks Denji, and then he's like, you shouldn't have believed my words. And I think it's very interesting to show that he's not acting like the typical teacher figure within a story, is that, when they succeed once, he's just gonna leave them on a break for a day. No, he's gonna continue pressing them because, once again, as I said already in this video, he might be venting in his own way, and this is his way of venting with the loss of Himeno. Food for thought there. So, overall, this is a very good episode of Chainsaw Man from start to finish. Honestly, it's impressive just how well Fujimoto is able to convey human emotion in many shapes or forms. It's talent. That takes a lot of talent, the way he's able to do that with these characters, and the way Studio MAPPA and the animators are bringing it to life is also very impressive. I am very impressed by just the level of detail that is constantly poured into this series. There's never really an episode that disappoints me. It always surpasses my expectations, and I think that even for this being kind of like a winding down episode, so to speak, or a lore-building episode and character-driven episode, this is easily one of the better episodes of the entire story, or of Chainsaw Man so far, and that says a lot, because there's been a lot of good stuff. Now, in terms of the ending song, since obviously everybody's going to be talking about that, since we always have a new ending song for Chainsaw Man, I like the ending song. It's not my favorite. It's definitely a very unique style, and so I think that, once again, it gets props for just being very unique, very different. It really showcases just different techniques of animation and art and stuff that can be put into anime. I think it's good. I think that the ending song is very good, but it is not my favorite. I would say that this is probably one of my least favorite ending songs of Chainsaw Man so far, but that doesn't mean it's bad. it's not to my so-called taste. But, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It does help me out a lot. And with that, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.